All right, so we are looking at that's kind of cool. We are looking at in particular, like I said, like pronation distortion, right? What that actually means. So go ahead and open up like our 7th edition here, and we're going to go to our posture assessment chapter here. Let's see here. So when we're talking about pronation distortion, we've talked about this before, but we want to make sure that this is like really kind of clear to us here. But you sort of take a look at it, right? When we use that term, we use the term pronation distortion. Sorry, let me mute this because I'm going to get a bajillion text messages. When you talk about like pronation distortion, they call it sometimes like PES Planus syndrome. It's a situation where like the foot and ankle is affecting the knee, or like the knee is affecting the foot and ankle. Like which direction does it go? You know what I mean? Like if I asked you, hey, your knees are caving in. Is that a knee problem? Is that a hip problem? Or is that an ankle problem? What do you think?
Okay, you said hold on. If the knees are caving in?
Yep. Is it a knee problem, hip problem, or ankle problem?
Originally, I said ankle.
Yeah.
Is one of them.
Here's how I always describe it. Is it a knee problem, an ankle problem, or is it a hip problem? Yes. So I always do that to people when I do this the first time. But you are right. It is definitely an ankle problem, but it's also kind of a knee problem, but it's also kind of a hip problem. Like it's really like, who knows where it started? Either way, like whether it started at the knee, the hip, the ankle, it's a problem, right? So we want to sort of address all of it. So there really is no, I did that on purpose. It's a trick question. There's really no like direct flat answer. But when you see this dysfunction, there are several muscles that are pulled out of alignment, right? So we kind of go back to this idea of like, we've got an overactive muscle on one side of the joint, we've got an underactive muscle on the other. So if we sort of see, if you imagine like sort of the difference between, sort of the difference between things here, right? This is sort of like how your joints should be operating. Like if I had like an angle, if I had like a line and I can swing this line in either direction, right? Like if I take this, I can swing it equally over here and I can swing it equally over here. Like if it's perfectly 90 degrees here, right? That means that there's plenty of room to move on both sides. So if you were to sort of like look at muscles that are attached to this, right? And let's say like we've got one here, right? And I just attach it down. And we got another muscle like right here. And we'll attach it up like this. Oops. Ideally, those muscles should be pretty identical, right? Oh my gosh. Oh, it's you again. That is why I use a different meeting idea. No, I was like, who is randomly coming into my room right now?
Yeah. I decided to activate it. Maybe if I have to step out to the living room, I have my phone with me to watch you. That's why.
I love it. That's actually awesome. So you sort of take a look, right? Like if I've got two muscles, here on either side of a joint, right? We'll say this is just our little muscle here, right? These muscles are both capable of pulling equally in both directions, right? Like there's enough room to move, to swing this way, and there's exactly the same amount of room to swing this way. Like that's what we want in all of our joints. You know what I mean? If my drawing makes sense? I guess there's actually a picture in the freaking PowerPoint that I could use. So it should look like this, right? You see an ideal, we call this a length tension relationship, right? And this is where like, this muscle has got plenty of room. But what we often see instead is we see this, right? Where we see instead, we get an overactive muscle on one side of the joint. And so it's pulling harder than it's supposed to. So it's all kind of bulged out like this, right? And kind of thicker than it should be. And then we've got like this really long, kind of skinny muscle that isn't contracting the way it's supposed to on the other side. And this poor muscle is like already being pulled into length, like way longer than it should be, right? And so now we see this big kind of over contraction on one side, and sort of this like under contraction on the other. And that's what we mean. We say there's a muscle imbalance, right? So when someone's knees are caving in, that means that they've got one muscle over here that's pulling way harder than it's supposed to. We've got another muscle over here that is not pulling as hard as it should be. It should be giving more, tension back the other way, but it can't, because if this muscle is inhibiting this muscle, right, it won't allow it to do what it's supposed to do. So now we end up with a bad muscle imbalance. We end up with, not looking the way we're supposed to. And we see like postural distortions like this. So this is pes planus syndrome, right? And it's a problem in several places of the body. So we've got sort of, we take a look here, and this is in your textbook, but we see like, we see the ankle joint is in a pes planus.
Question: what page is it in my textbook? If you don't mind.
It will be in chapter. You can find it in chapter 12. So if you open up, if you get and it's this textbook right here. It's the one with the gal doing the kneeling chest press thing. See this person right here? That's the book it's in. So that one, chapter 12. Do you got your book with you?
I have my book with me. I'm
Okay.
just opening it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in chapter 12, about halfway through. You find that pes planus yet?
Pardon me?
Did you find that chart yet?
Yes, chapter 12.
Awesome. Okay. So that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing these postural distortions, and those distortions are caused by, like I said, like a tight muscle on one side inhibiting the underactive muscle on the other side. So we use these terms here. We say it's overactive, which basically just means that it's making a compensation occur. And we say an underactive, which is either being inhibited or actively allowing a compensation to occur, right? So our muscles are actually getting, that muscle is going to be weaker than it should be. It's not able to contract properly. And overactive is tight, and it's contracting too much. It's doing way more work than we want it to. And that's how we end up with these postural distortions. So you take a look, right? We see that in the ankle joint, we have what we call like a pes planus, which is a fancy way of saying, a collapsed arch, right? So we take a look at that. We sort of Google pes planus. You'll see it's this kind of posture right here. You see the flat-footed posture, right? So that's the collapsing of the arch. You could also call that foot pronation, which basically just means like several different things are happening at once. Basically, they have way too much ground contact. Actually, I love this. You can kind of see here, like, this is what we want in an ideal arch. There shouldn't be a lot of contact here. And that way that gives you, if you actually look at how this works, this gives you perfect ground contact from like these toes here to here, and then straight to here. This is sort of the triangle that we want to see, right? Whereas like this, you kind of get this like larger sort of like blob section here. And actually, like, you don't get a lot of contact on this ridge here. And then the exact opposite is true over here. You actually have a lot of contact from here to here. And then usually it's like actually that. So these are actually like, this is actually sort of there's the science behind like why this is oops. That's the science behind like why this is so dysfunctional. Or this one here. This is also not very good. You know, like this is a high arch, which is also not great. So that's they're actually the term for that is technically PES cavus, but like no one ever calls it that, or PES cavus, I think is how it's pronounced. But really, what it most people will actually call this, they'll call it pronation. Okay, and so you're pronating your foot, and what we're seeing a little bit too much of is ankle eversion, where we're collapsing the arch down. That's the real big problem here. A little bit of supination, like a lot of their weight is in their heel rather than being evenly distributed across the foot. And then a little bit of external rotation. Usually you'll see, if we sort of go back to this picture here, you can kind of see this person with flat feet, they're turning their feet out. Now, some people are born with flat feet. Right? Not everybody has like a really pronounced, really large arch, and that's okay. What we are worried about is, are your muscles contracting in such a way that's causing you to lose your arch? That's different, right? It's very different from being like born with like a flat foot, So these are what we're seeing, right? Good Lord. Somebody is really upset in my alley. So we see the ankle joint is in a PES Planus. Now, moving up the kinetic chain, we said it's also a knee problem, right? So we're also seeing the knees cave in here. So there's a little bit of dysfunction happening in the knee joint. And so like that's obviously not working the way it's supposed to either. It's experiencing like rotation. And then traveling up even further, we're experiencing the hip joint. So these are our three joints where we are seeing dysfunction, right? The knee, the ankle, and the hip. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing the PES Planus, the collapsed arch, right? We're seeing the knee valgus, that's the caving in, and as well as like internal rotation. And I will say, actually, I hate that they say internally rotated. This really honestly should say externally rotated. I'll talk about why in just a second. And then we're also seeing adducted and internally rotated hips. So I'm going to pull up a slightly different picture of this, and we're going to talk about like, what's being caused by what, right? Let's see. And how are you following so far? You feeling good? It's just the two of us, so you don't have to feel like you have to mute your mic. You can totally just stay on, like, because it's just the two of us, or no, so pronation. But how you feeling so far? You following with me?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
I'm
great.
following you.
So here is, that's a little bit of a better picture. So I can see a little bit more here. This is gonna make it a little bit easier for me to kind of lay things out. So let's go over here and take a look at this and really understand some of the mechanics of what's going on in pronation distortion syndrome. This is actually a picture from our old NASM textbook. I just like it. I like it a lot better, because I think it's a little bit more clear, but than the drawing. Okay, so when we see this, right, what we're seeing, the disjointed, the joint actions that we're seeing, right here, this is foot pronation. Okay, so when we say like foot pronation, what I really mean when I say pronation is like at the ankle, right? Is we are seeing ankle dorsiflexion. We're seeing a little bit too much ankle external rotation. And we're seeing a little bit too much ankle, this is the big one, eversion. And that's probably the one that, like, if you're going to pay attention to one of these, that's the really big one. You know what I mean? Like, our biggest dysfunction here is that ankle eversion. Dorsiflexion, not a really big deal. Too much external rotation, also not so great. But like right here, there's our dysfunction, right? So, and then like I said, I'm just gonna put a little underline under this one because, in my opinion, that's the that's the biggest part. That's the biggest problem. The excessive eversion. So there we go. Right, that is our collapsed arch. Okay, so now we're gonna see if we sort of travel up the kinetic chain, we're seeing tibial external rotation. Now, I know the knee's caving in, right? But look at, like, the knee comes this way. So in response to that, the tibia, like the lower leg, is swinging this way. So that is what we refer to as tibial, because it's your tibia that's doing it, external rotation. Okay, so what is tibial external rotation? What's causing that? Well, there's some hamstring muscles there that are way tighter than they should be. And that's causing our problem there. So we're seeing excessive, and look, right? This came this way, so this went this way, right? Just like when you're playing, if you play Jenga, right? Like, this is how I always describe like tight muscles. You pull a block out from over here, you're gonna put it on the other side, right? Like you want to like balance out that tower. I pull out this, I don't put it here, I put it on the opposite side. Obviously, like, this is going this way, but like, that's the whole like way to play the game. You're trying to maintain balance. So your body's trying to balance itself out because you might have like a tight muscle that's causing all this. So we're seeing excessive of these things. Then we're also seeing excessive. We're seeing hip internal rotation here. So that's this, right? And so we're seeing hip internal rotation. Way too much of that. Not a fan. And then we're also seeing hip, well, that should be a straight line, hip adduction. Okay, so there we go. Now we see when I say someone has pronation distortion syndrome, right? When I say that they, they got PES Planus syndrome, pronation distortion syndrome, knee valgus, whatever you want to call it, right? All of those things, this is the knee valgus right here. Like these two things, that's what we call valgus. The caving in. So we see that, right? Like that's the excessive, what I mean, right? So we're seeing way too much of this. And why is this happening? Well, again, we go back to this chart here, that I kind of drew, right? We see we've got this is a balanced muscle on one side. So this is an optimal muscle balance, right? We love optimal muscle balance. Well, what we're seeing here is a muscle imbalance, right? And that means that we have an overactive muscle on one side that's pulling too hard or pulling when it's not supposed to. And we'll put this in blue here because it's kind of sad, isn't being able to contract with us. We have an underactive muscle on the other side. Okay, so there's our dysfunction, right? So now your job, my job, now that we can spot this, right? And now I've given you the tools necessary to look at someone and be like, all right, that's a knee valgus, or like that's pronation distortion syndrome, right? We should be able to see this now. Now you and I just have to understand, okay, what muscles are causing this? Why is this happening? Now we just have to figure out what are the muscles that are pulling too hard? What are the muscles that are not pulling hard enough? Let's get that list, right? Because now we can maybe turn off our muscles that are pulling too hard, and we can hopefully turn on our muscles that are not pulling hard enough. And if we do that, right, we will sort of untie the knots over here and shut this muscle down and hopefully contract this muscle enough to pull it back into that optimal muscle alignment, that muscle balance that we are looking for, right? So let's pivot into that next, right? Let's take a look here. So if we see pronation distortion syndrome, we see way too much of all of this stuff happening, right? let's get a list of probable overactive muscles and probable underactive muscles. So NASM actually has this list available. I'm gonna let me download this section. I'll just give it to you right now. It's available for download at this link. So you can always. Ooh, actually, that's not the link. My apologies. Sorry, it's available for download. Does that work? It does work. Okay, sorry. It's available for download at this link. But if you want the direct file, I'm just going to send that to you as well.
Thank you.
Of course. That's the programming tone. That's not what I want. But table of contents is also not what I want. Where is it? I really got to clean up my desktop. Things have been too busy on this computer. There you go. So that should also just like upload the file directly. So you can download it to your phone right now. I keep a copy of this on my phone. I will say if you're like me, it is way easier to pull this up on your phone, then take a screenshot.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's how I do it. And once you do this enough, you don't need this anymore. It's all up here, but I love to pull this up in front of my clients and I'll show them. I'm like, so overactive muscles you've got, and I'll point to them and lay them out. And doing that just legitimizes even more the things that I'm saying. Because like they know, obviously, like if it's already written down, if experts have talked about this and like it's been instructional in the past, they know that like I know it and I'm an expert, but also like I am not, like now I am very, very clearly like, listening to like experts that have already written this stuff down. It just legitimizes like what we say to our clients. So it's a really nice touch to keep it on your phone and just be like, all right, like boop, 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 boop. And they go, great, thank you, So you'll notice this actually has example exercises in it, example flexibility, example strengthening. Now, I will say just one thing to be really clear here, Love Patra, is that you notice the title of this file. It says the overhead squat solutions table, CES. So this actually isn't directly the textbook you're directly looking at. Like right now, you flip a couple pages, you're gonna see. Let's see here. NASM. Oop, that's the wrong browser. Let's see here. You're going to see a table that looks, I think it's a different color in your book, but it looks more like this. It's a really big, like full spread page, and it has a list of like tight muscles and weak muscles, and it takes a much, much, much more simple approach to it. So you'll see like it looks like this, like shortened muscles, lengthened muscles for pronation distortion syndrome. This list I just sent you is the advanced list. But since we're spending a whole day on this right now, and we're gonna go like in and out like crazy on it, I figured we would do the advanced list. You get a couple extra muscles that you wouldn't see in the standard textbook. And that's just gonna help you have a much richer understanding of this. So I'm actually gonna do the same thing here. So we're seeing the compensation, right? Just how to read this table, right? We see in the foot, our compensation is that the foot turns out. Go back to our picture here. There it is, external rotation, right? So that's the foot turnout. We also see the knee moves inward. So there's our hip adduction and hip internal rotation. And then we scroll down. We also see the foot flattens. And there's the rest of our foot pronation. Okay, so let's get our probable overactive and underactive muscles, right? So on our list at the hip adduction section, right? Or actually, sorry, what did we say? Was it the knee cave in? right? So we're gonna look at our knee cave-in section here, right? And we're gonna split this into two lists. Our probable overactive try to like fake center this here. I'm doing this on Microsoft Word or Paint. And then over here, we'll put our probable underactive. We'll put that in blue. So we'll say under. Okay. So we're basically just going to kind of remake this list, but it'll be in like a nice little chart for us to easily understand here, right? And then we'll put a little line to kind of separate those two. I'm going to talk about like which muscle is really kind of doing all this, right? Okay, so for the knees caving in, our probable overactive muscles, we're gonna put those in red because again, they're tight. We're saying, red means they're inflamed, they're contracting more than they're supposed to. They're the muscles that are pulling that cause hip internal rotation. They're the muscles that cause hip adduction. They cause the external rotation of the tibia and the foot pronation. So we look over on our list here, and you're gonna see, by the way, some of these muscles double up on this list. But first, we're going to see the soleus and we're going to see the lateral gastrocnemius. What they mean by that is like the outside portion of the gastrocnemius, right? But for us right now, we're talking about the knees, right? So we're actually looking down here. We're going to see the adductor complex. Of course, the adductor complex is tight. Like, how could it not be? We're seeing hip adduction, right? So, I guess I should be putting another right here. So we're going to see our adductor complex. Now, cool, direct at it. What muscles are in the adductor complex? Well, it's going to be, a pretty large group of muscles, right? Let's take a look here at the adductor complex, right? It's a pretty lengthy group. You're seeing your adductor brevis goes about halfway. You get your adductor longus, which goes all the way down, and then you've got your adductor magnus here. Now, the adductor magnus is the only one that's like kind of unique on this list, right? Actually, there's a really good picture. Yeah, here's one where they're kind of like separate. And then there's also like even your pectineus, like that's still very much like an adductor. Even your gracilis a little bit does some adduction, so like these little guys here, probably not necessarily like primary adductors, but these guys for sure, so how do you stretch those muscles? Because that's the whole purpose of what we got to do here. We got to stretch these muscles. Well, you're probably going to abduct your leg. You're probably going to pull your leg away. But we are seeing like the adductor complex here. And the point that I want to make is that like you do have kind of a difference between just abducting your leg, but also like some of your adductors also act as hip flexors, and some of your adductors act as hip extensors. So there's actually multiple ways you can stretch your adductors. I'm going to show those to you here in a little bit. But for now, these are our adductor muscles. Cool. Great. So now we've got our sort of like muscles that, some of the muscles that are causing this, right? Next one we're going to see is we're going to see the biceps femoris short head. Okay. So let's take that. Let's pull that muscle up here. Now, why in particular the short head? Well, I mean, it could also be the long head. I think there's an argument to be made there, but let's take a look at these are all of our hamstring muscles, right? So these are your 4 sort of muscles you need to know in the hamstring. It's not 4 muscles technically, but it kind of is, like they're technically like, this is not technically a separate muscle. They're both the biceps femoris, but I don't know. You have to memorize 4 things. So we're going to treat it like it's 4 muscles. So take a look here. This is the outside leg. This would be like we're looking at someone's right leg here. And you can see we've got a medial side of the hamstring and we got a lateral side of the hamstring. Lepatra, have you done like the massage classes where have they broken down like where you've had to find the difference between the 2 hammies? 2 different hamstrings?
Yes.
Okay. So you're pretty familiar with like the medial side and the lateral side.
Yes, I do.
Great. So you look at these, they do completely opposite things. like they're both hamstring muscles. They both perform knee flexion. You know what I mean? Like their job is to bend the knee, bring your heel towards your butt. All the hamstrings do that, right? This one does that. This one does that. This one does that. This one does that. They all do that. But they are antagonists to one another in regards to rotating your knee. So you can even do this like right now, right? You can bend your knee, right? And you can, once it's in a bent position, right, like this, now you can rotate it out or you can rotate it in, right? Your knee can swing. But like you can't rotate from the knee down until your knee is bent to about 30 degrees. Like your knee is in a locked position. It's all there. So when you try to like, let's say this is my knee. If I have my leg straight like this, it cannot rotate. It's literally stuck. But if I bend my knee, now I can create rotation from the knee down, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
About 30 degrees is usually where that happens. So the lateral hamstring, the biceps femoris's long head and its short head are both going to do tibial external rotation. So that swings the foot out. The medial hamstring, that's your semimembranosus and your semitendinosus, that swings the leg back in. So that does tibial internal rotation. So when we see the knees caving in, right, we know that the adductor is pulling inwards, right, and it's causing internal rotation of the femur, and the tibia is swinging outwards to compensate for that. Now, like I said, it could be the long head of the biceps femoris because it does do that tibial external rotation. But generally, it's this little short guy right here. It's the biceps femoris' short head that's really oftentimes kind of our big bad guy. Like the main villain in this story here, right? So starts in the middle of the femur and grabs right here. Really, really responsible. So we're going to go back to our list here, and we're going to add in the biceps femoris, particularly the short head. Okay, there we go. Right now we've got two really, so honestly, like right out the gate, even before we've really gotten into too much like programming stuff, just looking at our anatomy, we've got a pretty good working list already of things we can do, right? I just need you to stretch those muscles. You do that for me, it might instantly restore some of that hip mobility and get my client back into a good place. We got way more muscles to go. So we're gonna see those guys, the adductors, you see the biceps femoris, right? And then we go down, and this is always kind of surprising, but we're going to see the tensor fascia latae here, right? Now that, unfortunately, isn't in my freaking picture here because it is all the way up at the hip. But this is where we start to get into, okay, well, is it a hip problem, right? I don't know. Let's find out. Tensor fascia latae, TFL. So here's a good picture of it. You can see there's the adductors there. Not these guys. So there's our TFL, right? It runs from the ASIS, this little knob right here, to the greater trochanter of the femur, that big knob on the side of your hip, a big, bony bit right there. And then it becomes sort of the parts of the IT band, and it comes down to this little part of the tibia right there. That's the rest of this is your IT band. Technically the TFL is just this sort of upper portion right up here, but it shares common fascia. You can actually see, here's a really good picture there. There's all this extra fascia here. That's your IT band, right? Have you ever had IT band problems? You ever had like a rubbing sensation on the outside of your knee or a rubbing sensation up here at your hip? Like it burns like crazy, hurts really bad. You ever had that?
Yes, yes.
Brutal, right? I mean, just brutal.
Yeah.
And it feels like somebody's got a match and they're just holding it to your knee all day, right?
Yes.
Ugh. So why is that happening? Well, look at the anatomy here, right? You can see like, and I don't know about you. I usually, if I ever get this problem, it's always at my knee. I never get the hip version personally. But you'll see like, it rubs on this condyle here, or it'll rub on the condyles down here. It'll rub on the bone because it gets really tight. So our tensor fascia latae, the TFL, is very, very much contributing to this, because when you look at the TFL's job, right, you look at the anatomy here, it's going to pull like in this direction right here, right? It's going to pull from here to here. And so what that does is that's mostly a hip flexor, right? Like ideally, right, all the way down to here, it's mostly in charge of hip flexion. That's its sort of primary job. But in addition to that, it is internally rotating the femur, right? So again, we have excessive femoral internal rotation. We have hip internal rotation. So definitely putting our tensor fascia latae, or TFL, definitely putting that one on the list here. Probable overactive muscle. Now, moving through our list a little bit further here, we're going to see the vastus lateralis. Now, this is one that kind of surprises people, because it's like a quadriceps muscle. When you look at your quadriceps, they're mostly just in charge of knee extension, right? Like they're really not doing much to the hip, but take a look here at what we just looked at. We just went through our biceps femoris. We just went through our tensor fascia latae. And now we're looking at this lateral quadriceps muscle, this muscle all the way off to the side. And when you look at all three of them, they don't necessarily share like a direct insertion. They're not inserting into exactly the same place, but it's pretty freaking close. And if you look at your knee, I gotta find the right picture for this. Lateral knee anatomy. Actually, that's perfect right there. Look at the lateral aspect of your knee here. You can see there's your IT band running down, grabbing the front of the tibia there. Now there's your quadriceps tendon running over the top, but the lateral part of it is grabbing right here. Same spot, right? All this webbing. And then you see there's your hamstring tendon running on the backside right there. So now you've got your IT band, and there's a really good picture as well. You get your IT band coming from the side, right? You've got your lateral quadricep muscle coming from the side. And even on the backside, if we were to rotate the knee around, you would see that biceps femoris tendon coming down the backside right there. So the tensor fascia latae, the vastus lateralis, and the biceps femoris are all kind of coming into the same spot here on that lateral aspect of the quadricep of the knee. Actually, that was a great picture. Where'd it go? Right there. So look at all this fascia back here. It's all just tying around the knee. So when one of them gets tight, well, they all kind of get tight. So a lot of times when someone's knees cave in, it's really surprising, but you might even have been over this in some of your massage classes, but you can just get a little bit of massage like right on that lateral aspect there, just working that fascia, kind of working that, trying to loosen that up a little bit. And if somebody's got really bad IT band syndrome, this can be a really good way to sort of treat that. Just that little bit, like right on the side, just above the kneecap, kind of massage, which is, in my opinion, not great feeling. It is not one of my favorite massages out there. But oftentimes the massage that you need is not the one that feels the best. Are you tough? Are you like good at taking a massage?
Yes,
I'm not. I'm a baby. I'm a real baby about it. Like someone's like digging, I'm like,
yeah. But with this class, I'm beginning to widen my knowledge about knowing the type of muscles and all that. So it's really great.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I wish I were tougher, man. I wish I liked massage more, but I'm a little baby about it. I really it is not my thing. Okay, so let's get the vastus lateralis out there. Just get a picture of it by itself. Or actually, that's a pretty good one. No. Let's get one all by itself highlighted. There we go. Okay, so now we got our muscles, right? So again, there's our vastus lateralis being all tight. There's our IT band and TFL. And there is our biceps femoris short head. So all three of those are causing the knees to cave in. Now we're going to see one that's a little bit, the lateral gastrocnemius. We're seeing that muscle here. Now, we already kind of know that we're going to see that. Remember, I mentioned the foot turnout earlier. There's our lateral gastrocnemius, and there's our biceps femoris, and there's our TFL again. It's almost as if when your foot turns out, your knee caves in, right? Like I asked you earlier, right? Which is the problem? Is it the knee? Is it the ankle? Is it the hip? Yes, right? Like it's all of them. Like this is all kind of coming together to cause this problem. We go down here and we see the foot flattens, lateral gastrocnemius, biceps femoris, tensor fascial latae, right? So this muscle, this list repeats itself a lot. So we're starting to really kind of get some priorities here for what muscles we're going to work in. But with the knee cave in, we are going to see the lateral gastrocnemius showing up. So a little bit of tightness there. So why the lateral gastrocnemius? Like, why not just, why do we have to be so specific? Well, let's look at the gastrocnemius here. I'll be honest, NASM's textbook takes a pretty basic approach. It's like your gastrocnemius performs plantar flexion. They take a really basic approach, which is true. Like, if we consider this to be one big muscle, yeah, your calves plantar flex the ankle. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty simple. But when you do an advanced take on these muscles, I mean, you can see they're two separate heads. You've got a medial head and you've got a lateral head. And in that way, the muscle is sort of an antagonist of itself, right? And so the lateral head does external rotation from the tibia down, right? So it turns the foot outwards. And the medial head does internal rotation and turns the foot inwards. So typically it's the lateral head of the gastrocnemius there. And that's why it says that, why we're being so specific here. So when we see the knees cave in, these are our very tight muscles that we are working to hopefully get, to relax a little bit, right? Like these are some muscles that we need to kind of turn off. Let's just not space the way I like it. These are some muscles that they're very overactive that we want to work on. So now we flip the list, right? Okay. Adductors, biceps femoris, TFL, vastus lateralis, and the lateral part of our gastrocnemius. So if you're massaging somebody, right, you would get right up here, right behind the back of the knee, just on that lateral side, right? And for the record, I'm going to reference massage a lot because I know you've studied it. I am not a massage therapist. Like, just to be really clear here. So if I say you're going to put your thumb somewhere and you're like, that is not where you put your thumb,
no problem. That's okay. I'm here to learn from you.
yeah, if I'm generally close, that's but like my language, I would say this is where you're gonna put a lacrosse ball. You know what I mean? Like this is where you're gonna put a foam roller. This is where you're gonna use a massage gun. Like that's my side of it, right? So we place it, you're gonna get near the origin here, right? And just kind of work up and down those fibers and try to, rather than getting on the medial side. The medial side, there's actually a lot of argument to be made that we want to work on that. We want to strengthen that. Right. So there we go. So now we're seeing some, we got a good working list of probable overactive and underactive that's really related to these knees caving in. So let's flip the list, right? What about the underactive? What about the stuff, that we want to turn on, right? Well, first, let's just draw some lines here. I'm going to make my little chart here really messy, and then I'll delete these. But take a look, right? The adductor complex is obviously leading to hip adduction, right? The biceps femoris short head, well, that's leading to tibial external rotation. The TFL, that's doing hip internal rotation. Vastus lateralis, that's really a little bit more of that tibial external rotation. And then that lateral gastrocnemius, a little bit of tibial external rotation and also a little bit of foot pronation. But see, like now we've got like our tight muscles that, when you look at their muscle actions, that's what they do. That's why this list is the way it is. So let me get rid of those so it's not so messy. So now probable underactive, right? So when we think about probable underactive, basically we're just trying to flip this around. Instead of, more adduction, we're going to do the muscles that abduct. Instead of more tibial external rotation, we're going to look into the muscles that do tibial internal rotation. That's all our underactive muscle list actually is. So we're seeing the gluteus medius and the gluteus maximus, right? So I'm going to put those as separate here. Right? Why the gluteus medius? Well, it is in charge of hip abduction, right? Which is exactly what we're going for here, right? Instead, why is it the gluteus maximus? Well, it's in charge of hip external rotation, which is exactly the opposite. That's what we want, right? We go back here. Why is it the VMO, that vastus medialis oblique? Nobody ever calls it that. We just call it the VMO. Why is it that? Well, one was doing tibial external rotation. This one's going to do tibial internal rotation. Let's take a look, right? Our gluteus medius here. Our side glute muscle, right? It's going to abduct the thigh. So if my knees are caving in, this is going to work directly opposite of that. This is going to, hopefully, instead of letting my femur swing in this way, it's hopefully going to pull it back out to neutral. Our gluteus maximus, same concept, right? Instead of allowing, this one does external rotation, it's going to swing that bone open because what we're seeing is the bone is swinging in closed. People love it, But then the VMO, that's a weird one. Vastus medialis oblique. The VMO muscle. Why is it this quadriceps muscle? How's that gonna fix anything? Like how am I gonna use the little teardrop muscle to fix this? Well, again, look at the direction it's pulling, right? It's pulling this way. This one was pulling this way. I'll put it in, zoom in like crazy here. You see the fibers, right? Like this one pulls this way. Well, this one pulls this way. So opposite. So if that's going to cause, if we're seeing tightness, like that's terrible. Let me fix it a little bit. We're seeing this one pull like that, and that's overactive. And we're seeing this one, we want it to pull like that, but it's underactive, right? They're total opposites, right? This is sharing fascia with the inside here. So that caused that excessive tibial external rotation. Well, if we strengthen our VMO, that's going to give us the tibial internal rotation we're going for here. So we want to make sure that we're being conscious about how we target our quadriceps muscles so we get into more of that VMO and we keep that muscle nice and strong. So vastus medialis oblique, making it onto our little underactive muscles list here. Going back over to here, we also see the medial hamstring. Right? So again, we're going back to our hamstring muscles here. Instead of the biceps femoris, which did the tibial external, we want the medial hamstring, which will do the tibial internal, get it back to neutral. And then instead of the lateral gastrocnemius, we're seeing the medial gastrocnemius, right? We want to get that back to neutral. So I am going to rearrange these slightly so we can get the agonist sort of antagonist situation working here. So the medial hamstring is obviously going to be opposite of the lateral hamstring. So let me just rearrange these ever so slightly. I will say it's not going to be perfect. But the gluteus medius is definitely the opposite of the adductor complex there. We're seeing the TFL is going to be opposite. Actually, that should be here. The TFL, that's going to be opposite of the gluteus maximus, right? Because TFL does hip internal rotation. Gluteus maximus does hip external rotation. Biceps femoris, that's going to be opposite of the medial hamstring. strengthen there, right? And then instead of the vastus lateralis, we want the vastus medialis. And instead of the lateral gastric nemus, we want the medial gastric, medial gastric nemus. And there we go. Now we've got a pretty good list of, like, one side of the joint pulling too hard, one side of the joint not pulling hard enough. So your job is going to be to write a program that turns this stuff off and turns all of this stuff on, right? Now we got a few more joints to look at. We got to, we've only looked at the knees so far. We got to travel down and look at the foot next, but I got to give you a few minutes of a break. How you feeling so far? Is this all tracking, making sense?
A lot. Thank you so much.
Now, after the fun part is coming, we'll show you what exercises, do this. But first we got to go through the anatomy. So take 10. Let's see, it's 9:39. Let's get back at 9:49. Okay. Set a timer. We'll be right back.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. We're back. All right. So next joint action. So we've got our knee stuff. We observe the knees caving in. We know that that's happening. Now, let's take a look at what happens with the foot turn out as well, because that's our next like really kind of big part of this. So go back to here. There. It's a little bit of foot turn out action here. A lot of the same muscles. Really, actually, we're seeing this is mostly the foot turning out is in response to tibial external rotation. So because the biceps femoris was part of that, because the TFL even is a little part of that, lateralis and definitely lateral gastrocnemius, we're going to see a lot of the same muscles here. But we are also going to see our soleus, because if you look at the soleus, see a lot of the same kind of stuff here. It's also got two heads to it, right? You can kind of see there's much more of a kind of lateral aspect of it. And so the soleus can cause this a little bit as well. Now, I will say this. The soleus is not super primarily responsible for foot turning out in the sense that it's pulling directly. I mean, you can see, right, it's kind of got that outward sort of set of fibers, but it's mostly the reason someone's foot turns out with like a really tight soleus. Most of the reason is actually because like as they start to squat down, right? Like when you squat, you get into a squat position. One of the things that has to happen, actually, there's a really good one there for a second. Where'd that guy go? Where'd that picture go? Actually, you know what? Never mind. She's sitting. That totally does not count. I take it back. So what has to happen in a squat position is you have to have ankle dorsiflexion, right? Like your knees naturally travel forward as you're squatting down. And so if you see the knees naturally traveling forward, that's dorsiflexion. Your toes are coming up towards you. So if you can't do dorsiflexion, your body sort of finds a way to kind of turn the feet away in response. Part of that is that lateral gastrocnemius, that we see. But when we see this, right, like you can see here, this is actually a really good example of like what the knees should look like in terms of like knee tracking. Like this is missing his toe. This is pushed out properly. In fact, he's going towards his pinky toe. It's actually a little bit too much push out. It wants to be kind of split the difference between those two. But as you sort of look at like squatting down, you can see like you'll naturally go into a dorsiflexed position, right? So if you can't dorsiflex, well, then you're gonna be screwed. Like you're literally gonna kind of fall, right? So your body will find a way to sort of like turn the foot out, and then the rest of it all kind of comes in. So we are gonna see the soleus on that list as well. But it's not like the soleus is like really sort of directly pulling. So we'll see soleus is definitely going to be on our little list of tight muscles here, right? Then we start to see a lot of repeats here that we've already kind of gone into a little bit. So we go back, we see the lateral gastrocnemius again. Again, makes perfect sense. The foot is literally externally rotating away. I mean, that could not be a more direct translation to sort of what's happening there. Then we see the biceps femoris short head here. Right now, that one's also a little surprising. But again, like your ankle is sort of compensating because of what's going on at the knee, because of what's going on at the hip, or vice versa. So we're seeing biceps femoris, particularly the short head. Oh, I totally did not give myself enough space here. Let me move these other ones. That's just totally going to drive me a little crazy. I know it's not important, but it is just going to sort of like drive my brain a little crazy. So we're just going to go like that. That'll fix it. Trying to get a nice straight line here. So the biceps femoris short head, and then we see the TFL again, right? So again, like I said, a lot of the same muscles here. Showing up on our list, which is great for us because that means you and I have a lot shorter of a list of muscles to work on with our client and, make life a little easier for them and give them homework. So there we go. I mean, shorter list, right? Soleus, lateral gastrocnemius, biceps femoris, TFL. Go back to the other side. Again, we're going to try to get that foot turned back to neutral. So we're going to see the medial gastrocnemius here, right? Of course, why wouldn't we? That is the opposite muscle. So medial gastrocnemius for sure. Then we're also going to see the medial hamstring. And then we are also going to see the gluteus maximus and gluteus medius. Now, those two are kind of surprising to see on this list. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, why is my glutes are affecting my feet? Like, those are not close, right? Like, those are not near each other at all. So why is it? Well, again, like we go back to it, right? Like your gluteus maximus is the opposite of your TFL, and your TFL is affecting your lower leg. So gluteus maximus, and we're going to see the gluteus. I'm actually just going to put those two together at this time. Gluteus maximus, gluteus. Both of those not turned on the way we need them to, working against that TFL. And then we see the gracilis and the popliteus here. 2 L's in that one? 2 L's, no. Now, these are muscles that we don't actually talk about very much. So what is the gracilis? Well, it's an inner knee stabilizer, right? Now, this is kind of surprising. This is the one that I think this is where things really go off the rails for some people. We just got done talking about how, the knees caving in is a response to excessive knees caving in is a response to excessive knee adduction. And we also said that the gracilis is sort of part of that adductor complex, right? So how is it we've got an adductor muscle over here on our underactive, we want to strengthen it list? How does that work, right? Well, here's the thing. A lot of times we look at overactive, underactive muscles. We talk about, I usually draw this chart for people, right? A tight muscle on one side, a weak muscle on the other. It's the easiest way to understand it. But it's not always just a tight muscle on one side versus a weak muscle on the other, right? Sometimes it is a helper muscle. Sometimes it's a muscle that is supposed to be, doing a little bit of work to assist a muscle do whatever job. But unfortunately, that helper muscle completely takes over, becomes really overactive, and now somebody just has really bad habits, right? So for instance, like if your hamstrings take over for your glutes, right? Study your anatomy. Again, yes, your hamstrings are mostly in charge of knee flexion, right? But you look at their anatomy, those hamstring muscles attach all the way at the hip, right? Like they run all the way up from the knee all the way up to the glutes. So because of that, they can obviously affect the hip. Our glutes are mostly the muscles that are responsible for driving our thigh backwards, right? Like they are mostly in charge of hip extension. but our hamstrings do a little bit as well. They're there to assist. But if your hamstrings took over and they keep your glutes from doing what they're supposed to do, well, woo, now you have a center.
That's you.
Thank you. Now you have a synergist muscle that's inhibiting your primary muscle. You have a tight muscle that keeps your other muscle from doing its job. So that's not so good, right? We don't love it. Not a fan. So the gracilis here is actually an example of that. This is the muscle that was supposed to be doing knee stabilization. It's supposed to be working with the knee to keep that knee hopefully in the proper alignment. It's actually why you can see a lot of pictures kind of draw the gracilis in like a bent position, right? Like there's so many anatomy images out. I mean, like you can see this one is obviously like stacked from like the anatomic position, but you see a lot of examples where like you see 3D in the background there, there's the tibia, and it's like, what's the gracilis doing? Well, it's there to stabilize the knee when your knee is in a bent position. It's there to like hopefully keep that from happening. So what's happening is we see a lack of stability. This knee stabilizer is not stabilizing. That's why some of these knees are collapsing in. They don't have the stability necessary. So they're wobbling around a little bit. The same thing is true of that pectineus muscle. Sorry, popliteus muscle. Whoops. I'm getting into the hip here. So your popliteus, a little itty bitty, tiny muscle right there on the back of the knee. Then it wraps around. That wrapping action is just, I mean, best way I can describe it, it's like freaking duct tape. You're duct taping around to make sure that like you create stability in the freaking knee, you know? So sure enough, like it's got a little, you know, you can get tendonitis back there. But it's designed to create this little bit of like stability here. So when we see this on our list here, I need to close these. I don't need these open. I got so many freaking windows open. When we see these muscles on our list, the gracilis and the popliteus, I don't want you to think like strengthening in the sense as like we just need to like work it and like use it a bunch by itself. Like I don't need you to do like a gracilis specific exercise, you know, where you're doing like adduction. I don't need you to do like a popliteus specific exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to incorporate in your training, in your strength training program, something that causes the knee to have to stabilize. Like I'm standing on one leg here, squatting down, right? And you can see my knee wobbles a little bit when I do that, right? Or even just standing on one leg while I do like a bicep curl, or like if I did like a hinging, like deadlift action, right? Like those things are causing instability. I'm in a wobbly environment. So it's causing my knee stabilizers to turn on and activate. So while the rest of these, I'm like, hey, maybe do something for your calves to get your medial hamstring turned on, your medial gastrocnemius turned on. Maybe do something for your hamstrings to get your medial hamstring turned on. Definitely do something to get your freaking glutes turned on. But the gracilis and the popliteus, I don't necessarily need direct strengthening exercises. They're making this list kind of on their own. They're kind of in their own category without direct antagonists. They're kind of just hanging out on an island here where it's like, yeah, I just need you to get those turned on because they're stabilizers. We got to get better at stabilizing the knee. You are bad at stabilizing your knee, which is why your knees are caving in. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the thing. So we got to have something in our training program that incorporates maybe a little bit of balance or a little bit of instability, something that's just going to get those muscles activated and turned on. So now we've got our list, right? We see we've got, let's just line these up again with their antagonists. So for the TFL, the antagonist is going to be your gluteus maximus and your gluteus medius. For the biceps femoris, that's the lateral hamstring, right? We're going to strengthen the medial hamstring, get that lined up really well. And for our for our soleus and lateral gastrocnemius, we're going to get our medial gastrocnemius turned on. Then we're just going to kind of generally want to work on some knee stabilization, right? We're going to hopefully get that gracilis and that popliteus turned on so we can get some stabilizing action there. So now we've got our knees caving out. We got our feet turning in. I'm sorry, our feet turning out, our knees caving in. Got this backwards for a second, right? Now we got a pretty good working list of, again, stuff we need to strengthen and stuff we need to sort of loosen, right? So finally, let's go to the ankle directly and finish things up. We take a look here. We are also going to see the foot flattening. There's one more tight muscle that we really haven't talked too much about. But again, we're seeing like, where is our, where's our tight stuff? What's causing all this? Well, let's look. Again, foot pronation, right? Too much ankle external rotation, way too much ankle eversion. So we definitely need to work on those and get us back to neutral. So foot flattens here. Let's get our list of tight overactive stuff. So for tight overactive stuff, first one we're going to see is going to be our peroneals. It's the only new muscle on this list for now. So what are your peroneals? Well, they're actually like a group of muscles. Oftentimes the way NASM likes to do stuff, they kind of, oh, I forgot one thing. I did want to put an asterisk next to this one. Just a little asterisk there. One asterisk next to this one. Just putting a little emphasis on the stabilization. That's why they don't have no opposites over here. So then peroneals, right? So the peroneals, let's take a look at that group. It's technically a group of muscles. Here on the outside of the foot, the longus, brevis, and tertius. Generally, the one that NASM is going to talk about is your peroneus longus, which is the really kind of big one. Now, when you look at your peroneals, you'll notice they run down and they grab this side of the foot, right? And actually, what you're not seeing here is they kind of web over the top of the foot, actually. But they mostly pull from over here. They, runs back behind the fibula there, right? And this one runs up over the tibia and kind of, doing its thing, right? But all of it is grabbing the outside of the foot. So if you were to pull on the outside of the foot, there it is. There's our ankle eversion. There's that foot flattening directly, right? We would lose our arch because you'd pull up like this and it would flatten the other, it would tip it over and flatten the inside down. So our peroneals are definitely a huge contributing factor to our foot eversion, our excessive foot pronation, right? Probably honestly, like the biggest one in the ankle here, that's direct. Now, we got a couple others, right? We're going to see that lateral gastrocnemius again. No surprise there, right? Ankle external rotation. So sure, that makes the list again. Sure. Yep. Why not? Then we're also going to see the biceps femoris short head. That one's a little surprising, but again, it's external rotation. So sure, right? Like this is swimming the tibia this way, so the foot, kind of flattens in that way. Yep, no problem. Biceps femoris, particularly short head. Again, no surprise. We saw it before. Why wouldn't we see it again? And then we see the TFL. Again, right? We saw the knees caving in. It all travels up and down the kinetic chain. Okay. So, okay, so there we go. Right now we've got our tight stuff. We're gonna want to loosen this up. Foam rolling, massage, definitely stretching. Right now, let's switch over to a couple muscles we haven't really talked too much about yet. The anterior and the posterior tibialis. Both of these are going to be huge. Okay, so your tibialis anterior is right here. It's on the front side. That's why it's the anterior of your tibia, right? It runs right here along, sort of that front section of your shin there, right here running down, and it actually grabs the same spot as the inside of the foot there, right? Remember, we're seeing like a lot of our lateral, our medial muscles that we want to strengthen. So we're seeing some commonality there. But more than anything, we're seeing directly the opposite. We just went over those peroneal muscles coming down here, right? There's our peroneus longus, right? This long muscle right here, right? And it's grabbing the outside of the foot, everting the foot. Well, what do you think this muscle is going to do? It's going to invert the foot. So it's going to pull the foot up this way, showing the bottom of our foot towards the inside of our body. So your anterior tibialis is working completely directly antagonist to the peroneals there. And then we also see our posterior tibialis as well. So our posterior tibialis definitely needing to be strengthened as well, because again, we take a look at it. It's on the opposite side, right? This time it's in the back. It is running along the back, but again, it runs the inside of the foot, not the outside. So the peroneals do eversion, and both of your tibialis muscles do inversion, which we want more of, right? Because we are seeing excessive ankle eversion. We see the collapsed arch. So the anterior and the posterior tibialis are both going to be really, really, really big there. Then we see a couple other muscles that we're not super surprised to see. We see the medial gastrocnemius again. So that one already made the list earlier. And we see the gluteus medius there, which that one is a little surprising. It's like, whoa, my glutes again, all the way from, all the way from down below. But again, like we want more abduction here. So that's actually working opposite that TFL like it has been. So, okay, so let's line these up with their, let's line these up with their antagonists again. Let's see here, peroneals, that's going to be opposites of those guys. That's pretty good. Let's just move this down slightly. Lateral gastrocnemius, obviously that's going to be opposite of the medial gastrocnemius, so, no surprise there. Biceps femoris short head and TFL. I would say the TFL is really just the one on the list that's going to be opposite the gluteus medius. So there we go. Now we've got sort of a good working list of agonists to antagonists. I got a list of muscles I want to strengthen and a list of muscles I want to shorten. Now, again, one of the big things I kept saying is like we need more stability. So I got a really good kind of video to show you here. And it's going to kind of break down when we see someone squatting, how or when we see like that static posture, why somebody is out of alignment here. So let's go. Let's see here. So we're gonna get a really good breakdown here and sort of how this happens. And he's going to take us through just really quickly how to get those muscles turned on the way we really want to. Oh, actually, wait, I want to start with this one. Whoops, wrong video first.
Buy now at googlestore.com.
Let's look at a movement preparation program designed specifically for your client. So what we'll begin with is looking at the overhead squat assessment. So we'll ask Claire to first of all align her 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. We want to be sure the feet are approximately hip width apart, toes pointing straight ahead. The knees are going to be aligned with the second and third toe. Hips are going to be neutral. Go ahead and reach both of the hands all the way overhead. So to begin here, we're going to look at the anterior view. And with the anterior view, we're looking specifically at the feet and the knees. So as soon as you're ready, go ahead and squat to about the height of a normal chair. and we're going to repeat maybe 5 repetitions. So as she lowers down, we can begin to see the feet are turning out, knees are coming in, toes are also starting to come up. We'll go ahead and just have her do one more. And you can go ahead and relax. We can clearly see those compensations, so what we'll do now is go ahead and move on to our program. We know that if the feet turn out and the knees come in, our calves are going to be overactive as well as the adductors. So let's go ahead and foam roll those. So we'll grab our foam roller, go ahead and take a seat on the ground, position the roller here with the foot right in the center. The opposite leg will come over top for extra compression. If for any reason you need to reduce the compression, if it's too painful, you can uncross the leg here. Now we'll raise the hips and we'll slowly begin to roll towards the knee. Remember, about 1 inch per second, keeping the foot relaxed. You can set the hips down there and reposition the hands. When you find a tender spot, something that you identify as tender, you're going to stop and hold. We're going to hold this position for 20 to 30 seconds or until the tenderness starts to reduce, so be sure you breathe. Try to relax the muscle. You can go ahead and relax there. What you would do is perform that on the other side. Now we're going to move on to the adductor. So we'll position the foam roller here. You'll go into a face down position or prone position. The legs positioned in the center of the roller, there on the adductor. Elbows are in front of the body, right below the shoulders, maintaining the compression here on this side. Now again, a nice slow roll towards the midline of the body, so you'll slowly start to roll your body out. Whenever you find that most tender spot, you're going to stop and hold. Remember, just maintain the compression. Be sure you're breathing. Big, deep breaths allows the body to relax. Hold that for 20 to 30 seconds, and then you would repeat on the other side. Now we're going to move into our static stretch. We'll begin by statically stretching the calf, the same areas we foam rolled. So from here, just go into a staggered stance position. We'll focus again on our kinetic chain checkpoints. So here we'll slightly internally rotate. We'll engage the quadricep, engage the glutes, keep a neutral position here with the spine. Now by bending that right knee, slowly go to where you reach that first point of tension, and then you're going to hold for 20 to 30 seconds. And remember, a static stretch is not supposed to hurt. There may be some discomfort at that end range, but it should not be painful. After that 30 seconds, you would repeat the same thing on the other side. Now what we'll do is go to our adductor stretch. So here, feet nice and straight. We'll go into a wide stance. She's stretching her left side adductor. So this right foot's going to be positioned slightly in the front. Right heel is aligned with the left toe. Again, she will contract the quadricep on that side. Hands on the hips. Tuck the butt underneath as you engage the glute. Then from here, we're going to bend the right knee. She's lengthening that left adductor. Take to the first point of tension, and then you're going to stop and hold. And again, there may be some discomfort, but we don't want pain. After that 30 seconds, you would repeat the same thing on the other side. Now, following along with the OPT model, we're going to go into our core, balance, and reactive. And this is really where we get into that movement prep. So what we'll begin with is a floor bridge. We know if the feet turn out and the knees go in, the glutes are probably not doing their job. We'll go into a supine position. Hands are going to be to the sides with the palms rotated up. That allows us to relax the shoulders. 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, so feet, knees, and hips are all in alignment. Neutral position with the spine, neutral position with the shoulders. So I'll ask Claire to go ahead and slide her feet a little bit closer to her hips. Now from here, while maintaining equal pressure across the foot, let's lift the hips for about a second, following our 4-2-1 tempo. We'll hold for 1, 2, and now we have a 4-second eccentric. So lower for 4, 3. Notice how she maintains a neutral position here with the spine. 2, 1, and we'll drive back up. Contract the glutes at the top. Hold for 1, 2, down for 4, 3, a little bit faster on the way down. 2, 1, and drive up. Contract the glutes. Hold for 1, 2, down for 4, 3, 2, 1. If for any reason you're feeling too much in the quad, you can extend your legs out slightly, and you can repeat there. If you begin to feel too much in the hamstring, then you can simply slide the foot back closer. And you would repeat that for 12 to 20 reps. Now we're going to move into a side plank. So keep in mind those knees caved in. So now we're going to engage that lateral side of the body. So we'll go into a side plank position. So elbow is going to be beneath the shoulder. Notice how her ankles, knees, and hips are stacked. She's going to contract the quads, squeeze the glutes, keep the abdominals here engaged. We're focusing on core stabilization, and we would maintain this position for about 20 seconds. You can go ahead and relax there, and you would repeat on the other side. Now we're moving from core stabilization to balance stabilization. So let's go ahead and stand. Whenever we do balance, we're trying to focus on the client's balance threshold. So to begin, what I'll ask Claire to do is put her hands on her hips, 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, feet are straight, knees are in alignment, hips are neutral, shoulders are relaxed, and head is positioned appropriately. Now I want you to shift your weight to your left leg and just barely pick the right foot off the ground. Our focus here is the stabilization leg. We want to be sure that she's maintaining a neutral position in the arch. Now remember, I said balance threshold. If this is too easy for her, what I'm going to ask her to do is drop down to about 1/3 of a squat. Right there, perfect. And we'll notice that's a little bit more challenging for her. So I'm going to have her hold this position for 20 seconds. You can go ahead and relax there. You would repeat on the other leg. Now we'll move on to our reactive stabilization. Here we're focusing on landing mechanics. We're not trying to get you to jump super high. We want to be sure that your landing is perfect. So let's begin again with those 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. Everything's nice and straight. Whenever you land, you're going to hold for 3 to 5 seconds. This gives you an opportunity to tell your nervous system where you want things to go. So if you land with your feet out, you just bring your feet in to where they're nice and straight, hold that position, and then jump again. So let's begin by coming down into a slight squat. While using the hands, go ahead and jump. Perfect, land. Let's look at the feet. Very good job. Notice how she pulled them in straight. The knees there are properly aligned. And let's repeat, let's jump. Very good, let's take a look at the feet. Realign them. So here you're telling the nervous system, this is the position I need you to land in. And let's go again. Perfect, you can go ahead and relax there. You would repeat that 8 to 10 times, and that gives you your movement prep. We did the foam rolling, we did the static stretching, we did some core activation, some balance, and some reactive training. So from here, you can either repeat that up to 3 times, or you can move right into the resistance portion.
All right, so that's not necessarily like a full workout, right? But that is a really good program you can go through in the very beginning, right? Just like starting your client off.
Can you send me that link, please?
The video?
Yes, please. He's so interested.
Yeah. There you go. And I'll even label, we'll say that's the overhead. That one's called the overhead squat feet turn backwards knees. That's the name of that video. Okay, so there's a little bit of like I said, like knee valgus, right? So we kind of look at it, right? What we're seeing and what he kind of took her through in the video is like we're seeing we've got tight muscles on one side and we've got weak muscles on the other. So he was trying to strengthen those weak muscles, right? We had a lot of glute work in there. We had a lot of hamstring work in there, but particularly for, focusing on making sure those feet are facing forward, hopefully activating the medial hamstring instead of letting the feet. How many times do you see people, like, I'll bet if I Google it even, you see people doing like a floor bridge, and you'll watch their feet just kind of naturally kind of just like get really lazy and just flop out to the side. Like, that's not too bad, but you can kind of even see it there, right? She's got a little bit of like a foot turn out action while we're doing this. We see it's really, that was not so bad either. It's really common to kind of have this problem. You see a lot of these are all demos on the internet. Here's people trying to learn how to do these movements, and you see these examples of like people just kind of having like lazy foot, just kind of generally turning out. That's a unique one. That's totally different. That's like if you want an all quad glute bridge, that's how you do it. Well, oh, there we go. There's another one. And see just a little bit of like, flattening and art, turning the foot out there. So it's one of those things we have to pay attention. There's a really bad one, right? That guy's like fully turning his foot out. And he's doing it from a knee. He's doing like an elevated version with his heel down. That is going to directly strengthen his biceps femoris short head. You can even kind of see it. Look, it's contracted on that lateral hamstring right there. That is a horrible bridge. Bad demo. So there's another one, feet turning out, right? That's what I need to do. I just need to find pictures of my male clients doing it. That's how you find the bad posture. But yeah, so we see the foot turn out, and it's strengthening the wrong part of our hamstring. We need that medial hamstring turned out. So honestly, I'll even sometimes just like slightly have my clients' feet turn in. For the most part, like I want them neutral, but like sometimes I'll even say, like, if you're gonna have an error, maybe just point those toes ever so slightly at each other. They'll meet 100 miles down the road. You know what I mean? Like just barely turning in to get the medial side turned on. And then we need a little bit of that anterior posterior tibialis, a little bit of like, contraction, getting the feet to pull up. So we're just going to go ahead and really simply, we're going to go back through this video here, and we're going to label out these exercises. So I'm going to mute it, and then we're going to kind of go through and put this on a workout template. So let me just open a workout template here. And, show what a really good version of this would sort of look like very, very, very simply. So I'm just going to move this over here. How our windows kind of side by side here, and then we just zoom out a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now, like, beginning of the workout, right? He had her do the overhead squat, and then right out the gate, he's like, okay, lateral gastrocnemius, really, 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 really tight. So, he's looking at it, and we're gonna do a little bit of SMR. SMR, self-myofascial release, is basically like, it's the free massage. You know what I mean? It's the client giving themselves their own massage here, right? So we're gonna do a little bit of SMR for the lateral gastrocnemius. Now, if I was actually talking to my clients, I'd probably just go like this. I'd probably say SMR calves, right? I'd probably take a much simpler approach. And then maybe in the coaching tip, I would say like focus on the lateral aspect of the calves. You know what I mean? That might tell them what I need to tell. There's really no textbook perfect way to write all this stuff out. But if I were designing the program before I like get it on paper, how I would write this is I would just say SMR, let's say lateral gastrocnemius, right? I'd probably put a little abbreviation there. That would be a note for myself. Then obviously he's getting into her adductors. So he's going to continue on with the adductors, right? A little bit of SMR for the inner thigh there, right? Now, is it the adductor magnus? Is it the adductor longus or the brevis, right? Really, you can kind of get in there with that foam roller on any of these, and it's still going to be pretty darn effective. So just a little bit there, right? Now, obviously, there's more, right? We go back to our list here. We see, the adductors was tight. TFL, I could travel up there, get into that tensor fascia latae, right? Placing a foam roller right there on the pocket, basically. Right, so if we go SMR on the TFL, basically, we're just going to place that foam roller directly where my pocket would be. I started. Get out of here, ads. And there we go, right? Hopefully getting that muscle sort of turned off and loosened up. I could do a little bit of like foam rolling even for the vastus lateralis there if I want to. That actually might be somewhat effective, just like on the lateral aspect of my quadriceps. But generally, if you get your lateral gastrocnemius, you get your adductors and you get your TFL. I'm just going to say calves, adductors, and TFL. You're going to be in a pretty good spot. Now, there is one more that I really like that I'm going to put. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm doing the simple NASM version. I will build you an advanced program next. I got to make sure I do this properly. So we go SMR, calves, adductors, and TFL, right? That's going to get you 90% of it. It's really pretty good. So now we just got to make sure that we're picking the right numbers. Generally, we're going to pick anywhere from 1 to 2 sets. And we want to do a 30 seconds minimum on our foam rolling, right? So that's what's going to be listed in your textbook, right? 1 to 2 sets, 30 seconds minimum. I actually think it's 1 to 3 sets, actually. So then we need to follow this up. Now that we've untied the knots, right, he follows it up with getting into a stretching program. So he brings her up, has her drive her calf down, and he's getting that lateral gastrocnemius kind of stretched out. So again, we're following up what we sort of like loosened up, right? We got into this a little bit. We got into these a little bit, right? Oh, I forgot. Nope. Sorry. I'm going to build you an advanced program in a minute. So now we get one more. Let's get in there. We got to follow up with our static stretches. We're going to static gastrocnemius stretch. So he's going to have her drive her heel down, squeeze her glute. You know, we're going to do it with a static. The next one he moves into is the standing adductor stretch. So a static standing adductor stretch. And then I think that's where he ends it, right? He doesn't do the third one. I put the TFL in here. So we'll go with the static standing TFL stretch. What is that? Actually, I need to Google it. It's right there. So TFL stretch, you know, we're going to get into that hip, kind of loosen it up against a hip flexor. So she's going to drive her hip into extension. So now she's got extension. It's a hip internal rotator. So she's going to turn her foot out into hip external rotation. She's going to drive her arm out. Now, what that does, that just kind of generally pulls the fascial lines all the way up. And she's going to lean away and open up her hip a little bit. And that's just going to get right into that TFL and hopefully loosen that up slightly. There's other TFL stretches out there. You can see here's one. You can always just drop one leg back behind the other and kind of create a long line there. That also kind of pulls on that. Or you do it with a little bit of support there. Personally, I think this one is my favorite. I think it works really well. So 3 little simple stretches here. Again, there's going to be 1 to 3 sets each. 30 seconds minimum. And there we go. We wrote a program. Now I can, like I said, I can put some coaching tips in there, right? I would say, and I wouldn't say 1 to 3 sets. If I were training my client, I would tell them how many sets I want to do. So I'd be like, I want you to do 1 set of all of these, right? And I wouldn't say 30 seconds minimum. I would say 30 seconds. And then because these are all single-sided exercises, I need to put the word each in there because they got 2 legs, right? So this is just me trying to be more clear for my clients so they know how to do this properly. I can also put some coaching tips in there, right? I can say focus on the lateral aspect of the calves, right? I can say that. I can go down here and put some other coaching tips in there, right? With the static gastrocnemius, I would say, you know, make sure toes are pointed forward and back foot is not turned out at all. And then I might even say something as well, like squeeze glutes, right? So I can put a little coaching tip in there just to make sure that my client does this exactly correctly. Standing adductor stretch, you know, I could say, make sure, you know, instead of make sure, I'm going to say ensure, and then I'll say missing face. Ensure both toes point forward. So just little tips like that are what that little coaching tip section is for. And I could say squeeze glutes. There we go. So now I put a little bit of coaching tip in there. This is just something I can write for my client as homework, right? And then we're going to go into the movement prep section. So now he's going to kind of get into, it's like, okay, we have addressed the tight overactive stuff. We've sort of loosened up most of this. We got some more on there. Like I said, I'm going to do an advanced program in a minute. Now we just need to get into the underactive stuff. So his first thing he's going to try to turn on is he's going to get her glutes turned on, right? Now, he's not just getting her glutes turned on. He is also getting a little bit of hamstring action here, because when she does hip extension like that, she's using her glutes. She's also using her hamstrings. So we'll go with a floor bridge. Pretty darn simple exercise there, right? But again, in the coaching tips, it's really important for me to make sure I don't let my clients' feet turn out. So again, ensure feet, or we're going to ensure toes point straight forward. So that way she's really mostly focusing on her glutes there. Now, if my client was in the stabilization phase, I've already sort of picked static stretches here, so that makes the most sense in the stabilization phase. But I'm probably going to do anywhere from 1 to 3 sets, maybe even up to 4 sets if I want to, and anywhere from 12 to 20 reps there. I want to make sure I'm doing a slow tempo, and I can take up to 0 to 90 seconds of rest if I need it, right? So if I'm really writing this program, what I would probably do is give my clients like 3 sets. I'd probably go right in the middle, go with like 15 reps. I'll probably give them like 30 seconds of rest. Now she's going straight into a side plank. Really good. Why is the side plank such a good option here? Well, again, she has to stabilize, pretty unbalanced, which is nice. So it's getting some of those stabilizer muscles, but she's using her medial glute here, right? I could make that even harder by having her do like a leg abduction. That would turn her gluteus medius on, which would be even better, right? But the side plank is a really, really great option here. So we'll go 3, we'll say like 20 seconds each on each side, and that'll be kind of clear to the client there. This is an isometric tempo. Obviously, like, it is as slow as it gets because they're not allowed to move. And we'll do 30 seconds of rest again. And then he's going to get a little bit of balance here. Now he's having her do just a really simple single leg sort of balancing exercise. She's sort of sitting into maybe a little bit of a squat there, right? It's not bad. He's literally just going very, 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 very simply with the single leg balance. It's not bad, but he did have her do a little bit of a reach. So we're going to say single leg balance with reach, which the full exercise looks a little bit more like this. He only had her doing the really simple one where she was just like reaching straight forward. But the more advanced version, you can reach out forward, you can reach to the side, you can reach back. Personally, I just really like the other two. I actually don't love a forward reach. I like the lateral reach, and I really like the external rotation reach. So that's usually what I end up telling my clients is just do that portion. So we put a little bit of that in there. We'll go 3 sets again. Let's go with 8 each. And then we'll go, actually, I guess I shouldn't be doing 8 each. That'd be 2. No, that's fine. 8 each is fine. And then we'll go with a slow tempo again. Then we'll take 30 seconds of rest. So you should be able to kind of get through this pretty easily with a standard client. Like, this is a really good way to just kind of get the right muscles turned on before we get into. Now I can get into what my actual workout is. Maybe it's barbell squats. Maybe it's, deadlift, right? Whatever my workout actually is, I can do whatever I want because I've taken the time to ensure that like I've restored my posture before I ever walk on to the gym floor. You know what I mean? I got the right things turned on. I got the other stuff turned off. Does that make sense? I'm feeling pretty good to you.
Absolutely.
Love it. Okay, so that is the real basic program, right? You can, by the way, on that little sheet that I sent you, you can see they've also got a real basic program up here. Example flexibility exercises. So you can actually see where they've got the overactive stuff turning off, and you can see it. Look, like feet turning out, calf stretch, hamstring stretch, standing TFL stretch. We didn't do the hamstring stretch. I'm gonna get to those in a little bit. Adductors, TFL, calves again. We go back over here. Peroneal, we didn't do that one, but calves, hamstrings, TFL, right? So we're seeing the same stretches, right? Except they're just giving general suggestions. There's like, they're called a calf stretch in general, right? And then over here, we see example strengthening exercises like the single leg balance with reach, lateral tube walking, a ball squat, a ball bridge. So we got some more advanced takes that I think are much better, and we're going to build that program next. But first, 10:41. We're bleeding time the way I always do. 10 minutes. We'll be back. 10:51. Take a few. Let the brain cool off. Check on your morning coffee.
All right, thank you.
Of course. Okay, we're back. So I got a
I'm here.
awesome. So we've got a, oh gosh. Good Lord. Better video. At least in my opinion. We're gonna talk a little bit more about like that foot flattened knees caving in situation here. So all right. Here's another video that I like a little bit more personally. Doesn't necessarily go directly with the NASM approach, but really good start.
Guys, does this look familiar? I'm Dr. Aaron Horsching, and today I'm going to teach you how to fix a knee cave.
Get up and get down, get up and get.
All right, guys, so today we're going to be talking about how to fix knee cave when you squat so you can have great looking technique and perform to your greatest potential. Now, most cases of knee cave whenever you squat happens on the ascent, which means it's likely not as much of a mobility issue, but more of a stability issue. And this all starts with our fix at our feet. All right, now that I have my shoes off, let's talk about foot stability. Your feet set the base for your body's house of cards. And if your feet aren't stable, everything else up the rest of your body will never be as stable as it can be, specifically your knees, whenever you're squatting, especially with heavy load. So let's scroll back down. If I go down into a deep squat, my feet should stay in a good arch. Now, even if you have flat feet, what I don't want to see is excessive pronation. So I don't want to see that foot collapse over anymore. What we want to see is a good tripod foot. The base of your first toe, the base of your fifth toe, and your heel should be in equal contact with the ground the entire time. And when you get into a deep squat, that shouldn't shift. So I don't want to hear people use the cue, weight on the heels, because technically we want our weight spread evenly across all three parts of the tripod. Now, one way that can be very helpful at solidifying this tripod is to think about grabbing the ground with your big toe jammed down, and then driving your knees out to the side. Watch what happens when I do that. So big toes down, jam the knees out to the side. My foot just moved into an arch, and it's a very stable position. When most people have knee cave whenever they ascend from a squat, this is often what happens. As they come up, they shift weight off that outside part of the tripod, which allows the knee stability to then break down. So if I want to have good knee control and squat with great looking technique, it all starts with solidifying the base of foundation right here with a proper stable foot. So think about the entire time you squat, having your foot in a good arch as much as possible, even if you have flat feet. Try to have your body weight spread evenly across the tripod. Heel, base of your first toe, base of your fifth toe, jam your big toe down, bring your knee out to the side a little bit, and maintain that stable foot the entire time you squat. Visualize and feel for what's going on at your feet during your warm-ups. As you're doing some bodyweight squats, feel for what's happening at your feet. As you go up and down during your warm-ups, feel and sense for what's happening. Are you shifting forward? Are you shifting back? Are you shifting in or shifting out? The position of your feet have a direct relationship with your knees. If your feet cave in, what happens to your knees? If your feet go out, what happens to your knees? They move out. Now, drive the knees wide is a very common cue, but sometimes it's used way too much. If you drive your knees too far wide in a squat, what happens? Your feet roll on their side. Your feet are not as stable as they could be. You just lost your tripod foot. So drive the knees wide can be a great cue to fix knee cave as long as your big toe stays jammed down in the ground and you solidify that tripod foot, keeping that base of the first toe down. Now, I don't care if you squat 1,000 pounds. As you've seen some of my past videos, you can see some of my big power lifters I've worked with. I still have them do single leg squats. While they may not need to do a full pistol squat, they should still have the capability to do a good single leg squat and control their body on one leg. So what I'm looking for is, can you, and try this at home, do a single leg squat down and back up close to parallel depth without losing your foot position and with maintaining good knee control. So you can just pick your foot up, can you squat down and back up? And is that knee remaining directly in line with the foot, torso staying upright, down and back up. Is your knee caving in? A lot of times people who have problems in knee control, as soon as they go into that single leg squat, things starts wobbling around because they lack dynamic knee control. Now, how do we improve that? This is called the balance and reach exercise. It is a single leg squat variation that's going to have you control your lower body in a variety of different angles. So you have to produce proper lower body stability in different challenging positions. You're gonna put your foot right in the center of the tape. Now, they do make very expensive mats that you can use, or you can just throw some tape on the ground like I did. That works just fine. From here, we're gonna start with the easiest position. We're gonna reach straight back. So you're gonna get into a single leg stance. Solidify that good, stable tripod foot. Body weight is evenly spread across the base of our heel. First toe, fifth toe, foot is grabbing the ground, big toe jammed down. Stabilize your core. What we're gonna do is squat and reach straight back. So we're squatting and reaching. Notice how my pelvis is staying level. I'm not shifting to the side with my upper body. I'm making sure that my knee stays directly in line with my foot. I'm not allowing knee cave. My foot isn't collapsing over. I'm reaching as far as I can go, and I'm pausing. So I'm going as far out as I can. Foot's almost over the edge of the ground. I'm not pushing into the ground like a lunge, and I'm holding. Now, at the start, for some people, if you lack good knee control, you may only be able to go a couple inches. Here, and then back up. Starting with the proper hip hinge, you may not be able to go very far, and then things start to wobble around. That's okay. We're gonna try to go as far as we can every time and try to get a little bit more improvement. Start small, here, back up, hold for a couple seconds. If you're doing this with a proper hip hinge where your hips go back and chest comes forward, you should feel your glutes turning on. Good knee control, down and back up. Now, how do we challenge ourselves to go up to the next level in knee stability? We're gonna go at the angle. So we're gonna go out to the side, sort of trace, and again, chest and torso are leaning straight forward, knee in alignment, foot in a good stable tripod position. I'm going out at this position. This is gonna place a little bit more demand on my lateral hips, my glute medius, to control that knee from rolling in, because now I'm reaching a little bit more further away from my center of gravity. In this position, I'm placing a little bit more demand on my body to control this side-to-side rotation of my knee. And then back up. Now, the last way you can go, let's go directly in this medial reach right here. So I'm gonna be here, squat down as far as I can, back up. Let's say I wanna go a little bit further. Can I do so? Chest leaning straight forward, back up. Common faults, again, what do we see? People are going to start reaching out to the side. They'll think their lower body's in a good position, but what's their upper body doing? Even though my knee's in line with my foot, where's my upper body leaning? To the side. I want to make sure that my entire body is in good alignment. If I'm trying to do a squat, a clean, a jerk, I need my upper body in good alignment with my lower body. So this, even though my knee is not caved in, is not a good position because I just completely forgot about my upper body in relation to the lower body. So as you hinge, hips back, chest forward, reaching out to the side. Right here, this lateral hip is kicking on to keep my knee in line. Good foot stability, reaching out and back up. Let's do that one more time. Out to the side. I'm hovering with this foot, I'm not touching down. And then back up. So that is the balance and reach exercise. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you can do that in a number of different positions. I'll even have some people go behind themselves and whatnot. But for just the most basic exercise, posterior, posterior medial, and medial reach can be very, very helpful. Again, get out of your shoes so you can feel and see the problem that you have in creating a good stable foundation with your foot. This is called RNT, reactive neuromuscular training. What you're gonna do is use a band. Now, if you're lifting with a friend, they can grab a band and apply this resistance themselves. But if you are doing this on your own, all you have to do is just grab your band and put it around a rig. We are going to have this band up above the knee, and what is it doing? It's pulling the knee in. This is the motion of adduction and internal rotation of that thigh, which is the motion that happens when you have that knee cave, that knee collapse called knee valgus. So it is pulling us into a bad position. We're calling this feeding the problem. What we're gonna do then is just try to continue to perform a good single leg squat. Now you can do this like you did with the balance and reach exercise we did earlier. You're gonna stand in single leg and you are going to perform a small squat and you can reach back and then back up. All you're going to do is just try to maintain stability. And your body is getting this force that's trying to pull itself in. It's trying to feed the dysfunction of this. So you are teaching your body that in order to stay stable and in order to maintain balance and technique, it has to teach these lateral glutes to kick on. It has to teach your body how to create this stability so it doesn't fall over. So this is reacting to the neuromuscular problem, a training stimulus of driving the knee over into the problem. Your body's reacting and learning how to maintain stability. So this is a single leg squat. You can do it in a couple different positions, but this is the basis of the exercise, is we're feeding the dysfunction of the knee rolling in, the body's reacting, learning balance, learning how to fix the problem, and then teaching it how to maintain sufficient timing and coordination of those lateral hip muscles to keep everything in good alignment. So that is RNT.
Now, Disney storytelling and world-famous Disney service.
What's that exact same idea look like in a double leg squat? We eventually have to get back to your double leg training. We're gonna use a band. This is a slingshot band, a hip circle from Mark Bell and the slingshot team. This is the grippy hip circle. I like this one a lot because the inside actually sticks to your legs pretty well, especially if you're using pants or any type of slick short when you're training. But you're gonna put this around your knees. And from here, you're gonna just assume your natural squat stance. Have your feet in a good position, good stable tripod, body weight's evenly spread across those positions. Create that stable knee by driving your knees out to the side. Now right here, why is this just like the RNT? It's because your body is reacting to the stimulus that is driving your knees in. It's feeding the dysfunction of knee cave. So our body's going to react by teaching it how to create that stability. Keep the knees out to the side. And from here, we're just going to go into your regular squat, maintain that good tripod position, feel for your feet, drive the knees out to the side, slowly squat down, all the way down. Now remember that knee cave often doesn't come out to the very ascent. So on the way that you are coming up, drive those knees out to the side, hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, squat all the way back down. Back up again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, here, big toes jam down to the ground, knees out to the side. Feel those lateral glutes kicking on. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze as hard as you can. Back down. Teach your body how to ascend and maintain those hips in their tension the entire time. Something like this before every single squat day. I'm doing a couple sets, maybe 10 reps in a row, a couple of those half ascent pauses. And if I'm doing this correctly, I'm feeling very stable because those lateral hips are burning like crazy. They're turned on. It's not just that we're turning and strengthening a weak muscle, but we're working on timing and coordination because that is the essence of stability. And stability is different than strength. We can strengthen the heck out of a muscle by doing lateral kicks or those machines where you're going out to the side. But just because a muscle is strong does not mean that it can turn on and be used to help you move with better technique. That's the key difference between strength and stability. So all these exercises we talked about today were helping you improve your stability, the way your brain is working with your muscles to control your body and maintain perfect technique. And if you have great looking technique, you're going to be able to perform to your greatest potential and lift some big ass weight. So hope you guys liked today's quick YouTube video. If you did, please let me know in the comment section below. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to learn about in future videos. And if you did, again, enjoy this video and all the other ones I'm putting out, please share the videos with your friends and subscribe to my channel. Until next week, guys, happy squatting.
Okay.
That energy flows where attention.
So that's another really good one. Like, let's get that sent off to you. So that's another really good video. This one is called, is by Squat University, knee valgus or fix knee. Okay, so pretty good stuff so far. I like that variation a little bit better personally. It's a little bit more of a general program. It doesn't fit directly within the way like NASM likes to do things, which is like phase so-and-so to phase so-and-so. But if we were to sort of write a similar program, he also didn't necessarily go through like a lot of, stretching techniques, right? He's mostly focused on the activation stuff there. So there's a few other like techniques that I'm a really big fan of to get the right muscles sort of turned on here. So, and we're going to take this program and we're just going to kind of generally modify it a little bit, right? So SMR for the calves, adductors, and TFL. Also, I think a really big one is the peroneals. Those peroneal muscles that are really, really, really causing that, sort of excessive eversion. It's a really big one for me. So I'm also going to include the peroneals here. Okay. Then if we've added that to our SMR, we definitely have to add that to our stretching technique here. So we're also going to go with a standing peroneals stretch. If you want to know what that looks like, it's actually very, very easy. Looks like this. Basically, you stand. Actually, well, here's a seated peroneal stretch, which is also pretty darn good. But it is very, very, very simple. You're literally just going to go like that. The way I like to do it is just while I'm standing, drop one leg back behind the other. Probably can't see this very well. There's so much stuff in this room right now. So you kind of go like this, drop your leg back behind and just kind of drag that foot. You'll feel a big stretch right there on the side of your shin. Really, really good if you have that excessive foot eversion. So there we go. We're going to go with a static standing peroneal stretch, 1 set, 30 seconds each. Now, one more video, not a long video, but I just want to jump straight to the middle of. Brett Contreras. Brent Brookbush. Okay, so here's a really good stretch that I also really like. This is halfway between a stretch and a strengthening.
Need to turn.
So this one is called biceps femoris self-administered dynamic release. AKA. That is a really long title for a video, but all right. So what he's going to do is he's actually going to have her place. He's got kind of a really large ball here. You can accomplish the same thing with a very simple, just like lacrosse ball, but he's actually going to sort of pin that biceps femoris muscle. He's on the lateral side of the hamstring here, pin it with the femoral, and then she's just going to do several repetitions, bringing that leg up and bringing it back down. So where do you include that? Is that a movement prep thing, or is that like is that a stretch thing? I don't really know. There's really not like a perfect place to place this exercise. It kind of falls outside of NASM stuff. I would probably put this in the warm-up section here. So we're going to say the biceps femoris pin and stretch. We'll do that for 1 set. I'm going to get 10 reps each. Hold each rep 1 to 2 seconds. So it basically just looks like that. She's just going to kind of go back and forth. And it's almost like flossing that biceps femoris muscle there. That is a really good stretch that I really, really like when I have a client that has really tight biceps femoris muscles. So, okay. So now in terms of like getting into our movement prep, kind of go back. I really like the Squat University approach here. So we're going to throw some very gentle movement prep exercises. One, again, that I really like is the single leg balance with reach. The version that he was doing, right? The lateral, the transverse, big fan of that. So we didn't really have to lose that one. we're just going to kind of move that up to the front here. Single leg balance with reach. Then I really, really love that pause squat with banded abduction. So he's got that band around his knees. Actually here. Sorry, not that version, squats. That version. So really big fan of just like very slowly bringing it down with that abduction and just holding that isometric squat, right? Getting a chance to kind of turn that. He's got like his special bands he kind of likes with like the grip and stuff. You know, whichever version is going to work really well, I'm a big fan of. But just learning how to like keep those knees pushed out in that position there. Now, this, how many reps you can do? He takes like a really big long pause there. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. So we're gonna go with like 5. We're gonna go with a 5-second pause. And then we'll take 30 seconds of rest there as well. And then lastly, another one that we saw in the video that I really, really like. Gotta open that video back up here. As we sort of get down into it, is this version right here, right? Where he's doing just a little bit of like balance and stability with ads. Skip. So that version's really good. But again, he's doing that little bit of like banded instability here. Pulling into it. So this is kind of a weird exercise name, and they call it an RNT, reactive neuromuscular training, which is basically a single leg balance. Let's put this at the bottom actually. So RNT, reactive neuromuscular training. Right. Yeah, and probably go 3 sets of this. And then we will just have our client learn to hold this and stabilize. You know, they can move through small ranges of movement with that little bit of like reach back, right? We're probably going to keep it relatively low on the reps here. We'll go with 8 each on that one. Slow tempo, 30 seconds of rest. Now, this is pretty good. We've got a really good activation. Now, this is very much like a pre-squat day or a pre-leg day warm up. If I were going with something that was like more of a total body routine, I probably wouldn't have this long of a movement prep. There's also not a lot of direct core work in here. So I would probably want to include that into my resistance training section down here, right? I probably want to have a little bit of like specific ab work, maybe like a hollow rock hold or something like that later on. But this kind of thing here is, you know, you look at how long this is going to take. This is probably going to take you 5, maybe it'll probably take you 10, like 7 or 8 minutes to get through like the whole warm up. And then you go through this little circuit right here. That's probably going to take another 10 minutes before like a really heavy squat day though. This is the kind of thing that's really going to help like restore your posture. So this is all very particular to a client with like the feet turning out and the knees caving in as a problem. If I had more of like an advanced routine where we're doing a little bit more dynamic stuff, I might lose some of these and turn them into, you know, upper body exercises where maybe I loosen up the lats or work on the rotator cuff, right? I probably wouldn't go through this entire sequence here for just that, because then I'd spend, you know, 10, 12 minutes on my legs. Now I got to get to my upper body. You know what I mean? But if this were before like a leg day in particular, this is a pretty darn good routine here. Or if I gave this to my client as homework to do on their off days, it's not a super crazy, like intense, hard leg routine, but this is something that they can kind of focus on and do as homework on their off days, or maybe before cardio, which is usually a little bit of a shorter session. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then I'm going to attach it and send it to you right now. Example, knees, PES, Planus program. What? Oh, files in currently in use. That's dumb. There you go. So should be able to download that. Did you get that on your file? Uh-oh, I lost one of you. Love Patre still with me?
I'm with you, sir. I'm
Are you?
trying to. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all. Can
Mm.
you,
Yeah.
are you able to download that example file?
Yes, I have. I downloaded this already.
Excellent.
That was the one you sent me the link, right?
So yeah, just now I sent you like the direct file. You should be able to download it. Yeah, I
Okay.
got the links,
Let me
yes,
see.
but I just sent the example program we wrote sort of NASM style.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, I found it. Let me download it.
Sweet.
Thank
Yeah, of course. So now let's go ahead and just we'll wrap things up. We're actually really ahead of schedule. Let's go ahead and work our way through, you know, another very simple sort of PES Planus stabilization routine, and get those.
you. That is.
Sorry. So we got that version right there. So here's another really good one. If you have a client that if you're going for a much more simpler program, sort of last program that we're going to see here, we can see again, we take a simple approach, foam roll the calves, the adductors, the TFL, and follow that up with a stretch before those. And then another really good one, if you do want to directly deal with like ankle dysfunction, right? This resisted dorsiflexion right here is another really just like terrific exercise to strengthen. You can see she's just working directly that anterior tibialis there. There's our resistant ankle inversion, same concept.
Yeah, sorry.
No, but you're okay. You're okay.
All the things we get to draw money to deposit. If we have enough money, let us give him the full complete amount. So let us know we have finished that area, then we go to one as many. If the money we have is not enough, so that we know what and what can add, you know, so to get the things we need. But if we say deposit, now we don't know if we want to confuse. So I support to what he said. If we have enough money, give it to him, let him fit in full and get them to break it down. You know, certain area don't come on. This other one, we have never attention.
Okay, so like I said, like that is that's a really good example of like a you know, ankle dysfunction program. If you got a client who has sprained their ankle, right? These two exercises right here, that dorsiflexion and that inversion, both of these are going to be just super helpful for getting that back into alignment. And then in addition to that, we take a look at just getting a very simple alternating leg raises on the plank. So like this version right here. To get the glutes turned on.
Okay. I will let me find the list. I was trying to calculate the balance. I will post it to the group. Oh, take care of that.
Also very helpful. And then that single leg balance with reach again. So those are going to be some of our best sort of favorite exercises here, right? And that's how we're going to work with that PES Planus. So tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and get into an anterior pelvic tilt. Because I know also like that is one in particular that you're interested in. And then we're also going to take a look at like when we see our upper cross syndrome, that like rounded shoulder dysfunction, talk about how to get our clients' posture restored so we can get those shoulders rolled back and up on top of our body again.
Okay.
And honestly, that's about it today. We got super far ahead of schedule because we were flying today. But how you feeling, Love? Do you got any questions for me in particular? Like, what are you most worried about?
I'm just hold on. Okay. I'm just gonna go through that's what I was saying. Send me the links. It's looking interesting to me. I'm just gonna go over them once again tonight, and we'll begin from there.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Well, have a good one, and I'll catch you in class next time. Like I said, we're gonna go into that lower cross syndrome, that anterior pelvic tilt, and we'll break it down. Oh, I will say one more thing. Let me save this. Overactive and underactive muscles, PES Planus syndrome. So let me send this to you really quick.
Okay.
And this image should also help you a ton with, you know, what's overactive and underactive.
Perfect.
All right, where's my little button here?